So if my child is not reading, and I know that by the end of first quarter, then I'm going to make sure that I'm up there. And if you are not up there as a parent, someone should be looking at that very closely on a regular basis and really tracking that data. And so that accountability piece to me is a large item, me personally as a superintendent, but also as a teacher. The question before was, what do teachers have to deal with? Well, I am a teacher and my classroom just looks different. That's all, it's just larger. All superintendents at this table are teachers. And so one of those pieces is understanding the challenge, but also making sure that we can intervene early to address those challenges. Mike, I think you were about to say
Yeah,
something.
and I think the social promotion piece is a huge issue. Social promotion doesn't work, but neither does retention. So what that means is we're going to have to redesign the way we construct learning in our schools and really focus on making sure that kids are high school ready and college and career ready. In order to do that, you have to have a standard. And that standard has to be clearly articulated to kids, to parents. Teachers have to clearly understand what the standard is, so everybody's working as part of one team to help kids be successful and achieving the learning that's clearly defined. And that's something that schools can do, and I think we're going to start seeing these models emerging in schools in the very near future. I know there are schools, including ours, that are working on those.
You start at third grade. I don't think you hold a kid back at sixth grade or eighth grade. If you know the kid is struggling at third grade, then you go in there and you put mechanisms in place like after-school tutoring, summer school, and you test him at the end of the year and see, if he's moving along, or if he's not. I don't think you should promote him.
Do you guys agree with the senator who says you don't need a law? And if not a law, do you need something else from the state level?
I think we need less laws and less regulations. Let's be honest. Many of the common themes that we've heard over and over again is that it's a community issue. It's about relationships. It's about being able to do in our communities what we need for our kids to be that citizen, to be that engaged person. But yet most of the time, and we spend with legislation, or unfortunately some of the things that come out of the department, are how do we all shoehorn ourselves to all look alike so we can compare? Because everybody wants to compare. How does Northwest compare to Pattonville? We do it enough as superintendents. We don't need laws and rules to tell us how to do it. But again, what that does is it erodes that local control that's so important to build a community school. Because the school needs to be able to do what it needs to do for its kids to get them to that spot. Whether that's ungraded and move along at your pace. But if I go ungraded, they're going to say, well, how do we know whether your third graders are at where they should be third graders?
So how,
if you don't test them at it, I don't know that we
is
need
there a
to.
system anywhere in the country that is measuring success differently that works?
Well, this goes back to the same question. We don't need legislation to fix this situation. We don't need legislation. Politics can stay out of it, and let us
By this end of the school?
let us talk about how we accredit schools and how we intervene. It goes back to what we said earlier. When we have provisionally accredited schools that sit with nothing being done, with no accountability for being provisional for 17 years, that's an issue. That's what needs to
What
change.
you're referring to is the idea that I think there's one plan out there that says, okay, the law, as upheld by the Missouri Supreme Court, says if you're unaccredited, if you're an unaccredited school district, then you get to transfer. That's why you had the show tonight, right? And yeah, one of the proposals is to simply eliminate the term unaccredited.
It's not simply, though. There's a lot more depth
But what's
to
the
it
net?
than simply.
But the point is, the net result of that plan is the kids no longer have a legal right to leave.
Well, it depends how you look at that, because.
Well,
No, it absolutely.
I don't think transferring students is going to prove to be an effective way to help the community schools.
The Supreme Court has upheld a legal right of those students to transfer on a law that's been in existence since 1994. And your plan says, okay, here's how we're going to deal with that Supreme Court ruling. We're going to get rid of the term unaccredited.
No,
Well,
that's
but
not
let's,
true.
let's be honest.
True. That isn't what it says.
20 years ago when the law was created, our schools looked much different than they do today. Let's be honest. There's no getting around. We have a 1993 law dealing with the 2013 school, and they're different.
When the law was created, and there is some important context, schools were accredited based on the processes that they used, the resources that they provided, and achievement was a very minor piece of this. Now schools are almost entirely accredited based on achievement.
That today's unaccredited school districts, if they use the same criteria of 1994, that they would be accredited?
They would be,
Absolutely.
And that's-
Absolutely, probably with distinction.
The other thing
Well-
to point out, just to be
So
clear,
then what you're suggesting is that so what you're suggesting then is that the education the students are currently receiving and that education, I mean, who decides how you accredit them? So you're saying that the education they're receiving now is just fine? That if we apply the 94 standards to that education today, it would be accredited and everything would be fine?
So it's based on
But
dropout, it's
listen.
based on attendance, right?
you have to, right, I mean, we're accredited based upon if our kids go to college.
Right.
If they go to college, we're accredited on if they stay in college. We're accredited if they come to school every day. Those are things that matter. When people see a school that's in the 60%, they say, well, that was a D in my books. There's only a portion of that that's talking about grades. But back to we're not eliminating unaccredited. In fact, we're absolutely saying the ultimate thing happens if we've added another step. Ultimately, that district has lapsed.
Okay,
You
so
don't
if
sit there
If that plan
unaccredited.
were implemented, would the students have the legal right to leave?
They would, when that district would lapse, they would all leave.
Well, okay. In 2014, would the students have the right to leave?
In
2015,
in the-
2016.
We would be fixing those schools.
But answer my question, though. Would the students have the legal right to transfer if we implemented that plan?
The legal right is there.
The one that the superintendent
The one that
said
gets rid of the unaccredited category, creates the 4 tiers, the final
Right.
tiers lapse instead of
As it sits
unaccredited.
right now, we would not provide for additional transfers beyond the students that have
I
transferred
understand
this
you
year.
grandfathered in the people that are
Okay,
transferred
so then
now.
the answer would
But
be
so the
no
answer,
for
the answer is, the rest of the students who haven't transferred out would lose their legal right to seek an accredited education under today's current accreditation standards.
The difference is the money being spent to transfer new kids, even kids that live in the district but don't attend that school. I mean, Normandy, you know about that. The difference is we're going to spend a lot more money addressing
Okay,
those
answer my
schools.
question. So, this question I have, not answer my question. So, you're suggesting that the education that the students in Normandy and the education the students in Riverview Gardens are getting today is fine. And they should stay there because the education is fine. It just happens to be called unaccredited, but that the education itself is worthy of they and their families, and they should just stay there.
No, there's no removal, though, of accountability and intervention. I think the big difference is we're talking about a system where you have rational and timely intervention, as opposed to what has happened where you had, over a decade and a half of a school being in a provisional status, and then there's kind of like this hands-off
Well,
approach.
who's responsible? I mean, Steve Ailman is the St. Charles County executive. Steve was in the General Assembly at the time. And, he was there when this law passed. And this law actually was inserted, this part of the law was inserted very, very like in the 11th hour. No one was quite sure where it came from. And the thought was, this is such an egregious penalty that under no circumstances would education, the establishment, administrators, the president of administrators, DESE, no one would ever let this come to be. So, look, all these things you say we should be doing, well, why haven't they been getting done the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
Well, yeah, but I think that's the thing.
Resources.
The 1993 law in place looked at resource and process big. Do you update your board policies? I think that was one of the things that was looked at to determine whether you're accredited. Do your buildings meet safety codes? So it was those things, while they matter, sure, but they weren't in 1993. I don't think that they were the focus that achievement is now.
Margie, you've abided.
Yeah.
You've
Biting
been-
my
You're
tongue.
biting
Yeah,
your
but
tongue.
you did that at the first
I
table
mean,
too.
it really did. It came from, I mean, if we think about the evolution of where we are with the accreditation system, we did look at process, we did look at resource, we did look at performance. There was great outcry across the state saying, give us local control to help our kids perform. There is no one system that looks alike. Districts have curriculum. Districts, we don't need to count the number of desks in their classrooms anymore. Our schools are equipped to operate, and they look different across our state. Measure us on the outcomes. We want to know that our students are achieving, and if I hear, this is what frustrates me, that if I hear that they are doing math-like tests, that you're teaching math to learn how to fill in a bubble, that is not coming from the state. That is coming from the instructional practice that has somehow evolved from this accountability And we have to change that culture in our state. It's about learning, and the tests will take care of themselves. But as Tiffany pointed out, you have to have some measure of accountability somewhere, because every child deserves the right to succeed, and we need to make sure that's happening. That's the purpose of the accountability system. If you all want to talk about going back to looking at resources.
No, I'm not asking for that.
Right, I know, I really think that's an important point. We want to make sure our kids are learning, not filling in bubbles, but learning, and are successful.
What's wrong with the universal curriculum across the board, all of the schools? Same thing, same teacher. What's wrong with that?
Well, you know, we've had, with,
I mean, why can't we have a universal curriculum?
Yeah, exactly, let's do that.